Okay, so NASCAR is just coming off of its first of the three West Coast swing races. Fontana, first time NASCAR is back at the track for the first time in 2 years. It feels like such a long time, and of course the main narrative was next gen car and Fontana, should we turn it into a short track or not? Let's see how the weekend went, and let's also see the verdict. Is NASCAR in the right when it comes to changing Fontana to a 2.5 mile track? I know they haven't made a decision on the matter, but let's see. Did this weekend show that Fontana is good as is? Let's see. So for the Xfinity race, I gotta say, from the drop of the green flag, I just realized how much I missed this track. All surface, multi-groove racing, and it was an eventful start too to the Xfinity race. I mean, Austin Hill, he got put into the wall after receiving a bad bump from Josh Berry. Sheldon Creed also hit the wall eventually as well. So the two RCR cars, at least as far as Xfinity is concerned, they were pretty much out of the running as far as for the race win goes. Landon Castle, with the new Colleague Racing entry, just his second race with Colleague Racing, has already gotten into some early troubles as far as his playoff hopes this season go. He crashed last week at Daytona. Now he drops out the race early when his car catches on fire. Of course, that was the first guy to be out of the race, so he finished last place. Jeremy Clements, Jesse Woodgee also with a few issues as well. Clements, I believe, had a flat tire. Jesse Woodgee had a mechanical issue. Speaking of tires, they played a big factor. As for the Xfinity cars, for the Xfinity race, there were only 4 sets available. And this is Fontana is a very abrasive track that chews up tires like none other. Like, the only track I can compare to that can chew up tires about as much as Fontana is Homestead. Like, the only track that comes even close to matching Fontana in like tire usage is Homestead. And of course, this was a caution-filled race, especially late in the race. There were a lot of long yellows early on, but late in the race, there were a flurry of late cautions. We'll get into that later. Of course, that didn't matter because more restarts, and restarts are fun indeed. Trevor Bayne. Nice seeing Trevor Bayne back in the Xfinity Series. Last time he drove an Xfinity car, I believe, was around 2018. I don't know, it could have been earlier than that, but it's been a few years since he hopped into one of those Xfinity cars. Actually, I think it may have been earlier. Yeah, I think it was at some point before 2018. I think it could have been like 2016, 2017. I might be mistaken. I have to look up that, but been a handful of years since he was driving an Xfinity car, and he looked pretty good. He was a big surprise early. He won stage 1. He then faded back to like the top 10th place car after like a slow pit stop, but then he managed to recover and he finished in the top 5. But from the outset, Cole Custer was the guy to beat. He won stage 2, and he went from 8th to 1st on a stage 3 restart. Like, he is just like Trevor Bayne. Cole Custer's pit crew really struggle, and that's to be expected because in the case of Trevor Bayne's pit crew, the 18 team in the Xfinity Series, they have a brand new pit crew. Like, these guys, they don't have any chemistry whatsoever because, of course, the Cup Series crew, they're working now on the next gen car, and the next gen tires are different to the 5 lock nut tires that the Xfinity Series still use. So because of that, the pit crew that does work in the Xfinity Series, they cannot the Cup Series teams that have like Xfinity teams, like Joe Gibbs, JR Motorsports, which is like the Xfinity team for Hendrick, Stuart Haas, Richard Childress, and so on and so forth. Those guys, they cannot employ the same pit crew for both the Xfinity and the Cup race, because it doesn't make sense. Because especially the tire changers, now that they've been trained to change tires on the next gen side, they cannot do that for the Xfinity series, and it will be way too much work for them. So Trevor Bayne, because of that, he struggled a lot. Cole Custer. In the case of Cole Custer, he was using a Rick Ware Racing. His pit crew was members of Rick Ware Racing, a few members of Stuart Haas Racing mixed in, but his pit crew was mostly Rick Ware Racing members. So of course he struggled, just like Trevor Bayne. Slow pit stops were his Achilles heel, but again, he had a really fast car. On the stage 3 restart, he climbed from 8th to 1st in one lap. But that wasn't the restart of the race. The restart of the race went to Noah Graxson. Graxson, he overshot his pit stall. He managed to get the lead from Cole Custer on one of the slow pit stops from Cole Custer. And I fully expected Custer to get the lead. Again, he dropped back to 8th, funnily enough. He managed to make it, but that time around, he didn't manage to make it all the way to the lead. He only managed to climb up to 4th. And he just couldn't. Graxson was pulling away in the long run. Then again, another caution comes out, and Graxson, on the pit stop, Graxson overshoots his pit stall, restarts 13th, and by the end of the first lap after a restart, he was leading. He went from 13th to 1st on one restart. Like, that was insane. There were a few great restarts in this race, but those two of them were really great. But of course, again, there was another late caution that bunched the field back up again. By that point, I believe they were like in their final set of tires. I think they were. So though that last leg of the race where a lot of late cautions happened, it had to be done on that one set of tires, and fuel eventually became a concern. Of course, nobody ran out of fuel, but because even though the race went into triple overtime, to give an idea of how caution-filled that race was towards the end, I think that beat the track record. I saw a tweet from Jeff Gluck that said that Xfinity race, it set a new track record for cautions in that race. I believe it was like 12, 13 cautions, somewhere along that ballpark. But anyways, the final laps feature Graxson versus Cole Custer. In one of those late restarts, Custer got to run down Graxson, ran Graxson down and got the lead from him. And then from that, he survived restart after restart. He held on to the lead, and he ended up winning. However, one guy that maybe could have stolen that win from Cole Custer, and on that final restart, I thought he really would, was Anthony Alfredo. Because on that caution, on one of the cautions in stage 3, when the leaders pitted for like their final set of tires, that only Ty Gibbs and Brandon Jones stayed out because they have been involved in incidents early on that they had to use their extra set of tires early. And of course, they had no sets of tires remaining. And you cannot run scuffed tires here because that track chews up tires like the devil. Ty Gibbs, Brandon Jones, they had to stay out on that set of tires, which means that they will get swallowed up by the field, of course. Anthony Alfredo stayed out with them. At first, I didn't think much of it. I thought maybe I wasn't paying attention much because Anthony Alfredo wasn't among the leaders. He was running around mid-pack, I believe. I thought Alfredo had gotten into some incident. I thought he was one of those guys like Jeremy Clements who had suffered a flat tire. And of course, because Fox's coverage is abysmal, they wouldn't dare mention it. But no, it turns out that towards the end of the race, Alfredo had pitted, had left his extra set of tires, and he pitted, and on one of those late race restarts, it became clearly apparent that he had the fastest car. Restart after restart, this guy just climbed back up. Every time a caution happened, he already gained like 5, 6, 7, 8 spots. He eventually got to second. By the time the final restart happened, the final caution happened, he was second, and he lined up on the inside lane on the final restart. I really thought he would steal that win at the end. But then, I don't know, his momentum coming off of turn 2, his momentum stalled, I don't know, maybe his tires were used up from him making all those moves on the restart. I don't know what happened, but he just could not pass Cole Custer, lost his momentum, finished 5th. But that was still a great effort for him. 3,000 IQ strategy from his pit crew, Pat Trison. And I gotta say, this is one of those ways you gotta win at Fontana. That's what I like about Fontana. It's not just about the racing and just watching the drivers just battle the car all race long. It's also about strategy. It's also about strategy and having a good restart as well. And that is what is so great about this track. Again, another reason not to turn this one into a short track. There are so many other tracks that could be turned into a short track over Fontana. Anyways, like I said, Cole Custer wins. First ever win for SS Greenlight Racing, driving the 07. I know that 07 is a Storehouse Racing prepared car, but he was driving under the SS Greenlight Racing banner. He ended up winning that. He ended up getting that small team their first win on the car that Joe Graf Jr. usually drives. And speaking of Joe Graf Jr., this guy bought his way into a ride after failing to qualify what was essentially Custer's teammate, quote unquote, in the 08, the second SS Greenlight car, the 08. He failed to qualify, then he bought his way into Timmy Hill's 38 ride, who had qualified the RSS 38 ride. He did all that just to watch someone else pilot his 07 car to victory lane. That has really got a sting for him. And not just that, I know he finished 15th, top 15, solid effort for him. So, shout out to him for that. From failing to qualify to surviving the late race carnage to finish top 15. I'm not going to take away from that. Sure, the race got into like a bit of attrition. There was a lot of attrition at the end with so many late race restarts. But still, a top 15 is a top 15, so I'm not going to take that away from him. But still, the fact that he failed to qualify and his teammate, quote unquote, ended up winning the race. This is not the first time it's happened. It happened back in Michigan in 2019 when he failed to qualify the second RCR car, and Tyler Reddick, who was in the Xfinity Series at the time still, he ended up winning the race. So that's a big yikes for him. That's really a big yikes. So the Xfinity race was pretty great. But that does not compare to the absolute show that was the Cup race. And I gotta say, the Cup race really left an impression on me, because practice and qualifying was absolutely wild, a wild mess, but in a good way. I wouldn't say like a mess of, in a bad way, wreckfest. It was like practice and qualifying, there was a lot going on. There were like a lot of drivers that had to go to backup cars, a lot of drivers had to go to the back, but in a good way. I'm not gonna say that was a bad thing, but oh my gosh, I had a lot to talk in this Cup race. Anyways, the first thing to note, the first key takeaway is something that I touched upon in like my preview video that I made earlier this week. But the next gen car is really hard to drive. No one has these things fully figured out yet. And that was the outset from qualifying. Like a lot of guys, most notably Kevin Harvick, he spun out, had to go to a backup car. Chase Elliott, while trying to qualify, if Elliott made that lap clean, he would have gotten the pole, because that was in the second round of qualifying. But he spun out coming up a 4, and he just lost the pole. Anyways, we had 10 incidents, at least 10 incidents combined in practice and qualifying. The cars looked like they were on skates. And one thing just became pretty clear to me. practice and qualifying are back in a big way. This is just a reminder that practice and qualifying are back in a big way. And not only that, they have become must-watch TV. Like back in the 2000s when there was like single car qualifying and long practice sessions, we took all that for granted. But now, with shorter practice sessions, 2-round qualifying, similar to like Formula One, but at the same time, it's also its own thing. And coupled with the shorter practice sessions, this is must-watch TV now. Practice and qualifying has become must-watch TV. And the pole sitter was somebody really unexpected. But when you think about it, it really makes sense. Daytona 500 winner Austin Cindric, he just continues his hot start. Coming into this race, he was the hottest driver in NASCAR. The Xfinity package is very similar to the next gen car's aero package, so that definitely played to his advantage. And not only that, not just the package that they run in the Xfinity series, but everything. When you compare the Xfinity series to like the next gen car, where they run like composite bodies, an aero package that is not really like low horsepower, and there's like no big spoiler on the next gen car compared to the Gen 6. That really plays to how Cindric used to drive that next gen. Not the next gen, the Xfinity car last season. And he won the championship in 2020. And he came within a set of corners of making it back-to-back last season. So the guy has these things all but figured out. He's already locked into the playoffs, so of course he doesn't have to worry about if he doesn't have to worry about points. But still, the fact that he managed to come out of this race as the points leader still, even when he didn't have that stellar of a race. He didn't lead a single lap from the drop of the green flag, but for most of the race, outside of one incident where he got caught up in that he wasn't his fault, and what a heck of a save that we're going to talk about later, Cindric has really left an impression on me, a positive impression on me this season. And I think that this next gen car, is going to play to his advantage because he is used to driving these things, and he really showed it by winning the pole. With that being said, cars spinning out and flattening all 4 tires is still an issue. We saw that not only during qualifying with a few drivers, but also during the race, most notably with Christopher Bell, Ross Chastain, Brad Keselowski. And coupled with the next gen car being hard to drive, again, I thought this race would be a caution-filled mess. I was wrong. The race was caution-filled, just like the Xfinity race, but it was a pretty damn banger. A hell of a banger for the most part, of course. The tire issues still need to be figured out. NASCAR seriously needs to address this. Having a car towed because of 2 or more flat tires is really annoying. I know the next gen tires are bigger, and this single lug nut tires, they have no inner liner because of their design, but again, this is a design flaw on the car. This is not a design flaw. This is a design flaw on the car. This is not on the tires. The cars, or the tires, not really the cars, excuse me. I worded it incorrectly, but this is a design flaw on the tires. They have no inner liners. Either the tires need to have an inner liners or something, or not make the cars lose a lap. But better yet, just make the tires an inner liner. Just bring back the inner liners. Come on, it's not really that hard. I don't know why the next gen car, who thought it was a good idea to remove the inner liners, since that's what the inner liner is for anyways. It's to allow the drivers to crawl back into pit road after flattening a tire, so that they do not have to get towed to pit road and lose 4 to 6 laps in the process. And this is at Daytona or California. They're losing 4 to 6 laps at super speedways. Imagine on a short track like Bristol or Martinsville, if somebody gets a flat tire, how many laps would they lose? They could lose upwards to 15 laps. Spinning a race, at this point, spinning the car, if you spin and flat spot and get more than 2 tires flat, that's the equivalent of a mechanical failure. Both both literally and figuratively, because not only does spinning a car flattens your tires to the point where you cannot drive the car, it also causes, like we saw during the Daytona 500, it also causes some suspension failures. Again, that's what we saw with Christopher Bell. He spun out on one accident. He spun out, and then due to that spin, he got some mechanical failure happened because of that spin. He got to drop out of the race. He finished dead last. You guys really, NASCAR really needs to address this. And at the day of race, a competition caution was scheduled for lap 20, because once again, NASCAR expected this race, and this really scared me, because at this point, if NASCAR expected this, it was scheduling a competition caution for lap 20, it meant that, with the context of given everything that has happened this weekend, this meant that, NASCAR felt that the tires weren't going to hold up and that this race will be a mess. It gave me like 2008 Brickyard 400 vibes, and I thought that we were going to be having like a lot of cautions. The tires wouldn't be able to hold up because, again, Fontana is a very abrasive track. Even Kevin Harvick said it, and I touched upon this again in my preview earlier this week, that Kevin Harvick, one of the veteran drivers, said that the next gen car is going to be a trial by fire. Fontana is going to be a trial by fire for the next gen car. This is going to be like the true test of the next gen car, and it showed. Now, like I said, I had very low expectations coming into this race, but it looks like I worried a little too much, because the racing was great from the start, even with the occasional spins and a lot of cautions. Most of the spins were single car, and again, I was annoyed about tires flat and stuff like that. But I wouldn't consider this race a wreckfest. Far from it. The restarts were lots of fun, which also goes hand in hand with the elevated number of cautions, because more cautions, more restarts, more 5 wide. There was even a moment where we almost went like 6 wide for a split second. There were also new faces up front, showcasing not only the parity that the next-gen car brings, but also the driver ability. Erik Jones, Ricky Stenhouse, Chase Briscoe, Cole Custer, just to name a few. They were comers and goers. Those guys were comers and goers. Most of these guys were comers and goers. The only guy that stayed in the top 5 literally all day was Erik Jones. But he was not the car to beat. And he was not the car to beat. Cole Custer was also there. Eric Almirola, we're going to talk about him later. And the top dogs. The big dogs struggled. Like, we saw Chase Elliott spinning out in his qualifying lap just as he was about to get the pole. He was really fast, though. Most of the time, when Chase Elliott struggled early on because he fell a lap down after a spin, after hitting the wall while he was leading. He hit the wall twice, and then he like blew a tire, spun out after dropping back to, I believe it was 6th place. He didn't, fortunately, he was able to come back to pit road, but I think he fell a lap down in the process. It took a while before he could manage to crawl back up to the front, but he managed to do it eventually. Harvick was literally a non-factor until like the final leg of the race. Then Truex was nowhere to be found. Like, the only time they mentioned Truex was when he almost he hit the wall and had that close call with Larson and Cindric that I thought all 3 of them were gonna wreck. I don't know how they saved that. How they saved that. And Denny Hamlin, of course, having an overheating issue. So none of these guys, with the big dog struggling, it opened up the pathway for a new face. Not really a new face, because we saw a lot of promise from him last season, but a new guy nonetheless. It's very rare to see a guy dominate a race like this. I'm talking about Tyler Reddick. This guy was the guy to beat. And this track, like Fontana, Homestead, Atlanta, of course, before it was repaved, those types of tracks, they really fit his driving style, because again, Reddick, he comes from a dirt racing background. He's used to like having cars slipping and sliding, drifting across the corners. So dirt tracking it, dirt tracking it with the next gen car being this hard to drive, that really goes hand in hand with his driving style, and it showed. The guy led 90 laps. He led more laps this race than what he had in his first two full-time in his entire career thus far. I almost said 2 full-time seasons, but then I remember he ran part-time in 2019. I don't know if he led laps that season while running part-time in 2019. I don't know, but still, the guy really showed that he is going to definitely win a race this season. And not only win a race, but he could also potentially be a dark horse playoff contender. But yeah, also I mentioned most of the guys that came from dirt racing background. Those were the guys that were dominating this race. I mentioned Tyler Reddick, of course, but there was also Chase Briscoe, there was also Kyle Larson, Ricky Stenhouse, a lot of these guys who came up driving late models and dirt. Yeah, you can find those guys like nearly up the front. Toyota was a complete no-show, I gotta say. And this is a major surprise because most of the guys who have won, or rather not really won, but most of the guys who have run well at this track are Toyota drivers. Like Truex won this race in 2018. Kyle Busch was a 4-time winner. He was the odds-on favorite to win this race. I had him as my winner's pick. Kurt Busch, he also runs well. This is another track that really goes with his driving style as well. The Busch brothers, they struggled. Christopher Bell as well, another guy that came up from dirt racing backgrounds. I mentioned how he had a lot of issues, and his issues weren't just limited to the spin. He also had a lot of overheating issues. Bubba Wallace was involved in a wreck. I also mentioned Truex. Yeah, all those 6 Toyotas. There are only 6 Toyotas on the field, and all 6 of them struggled. And this is, again, another trend that's starting to form is that Toyotas, I don't think they can keep up with the heat, quite literally, because I think we saw some of that overheating during the Daytona 500. So I don't know what's going on with these Toyotas, but holy crap, they gotta figure something out, because Chevrolet was stomping the field. They were dominating. Ford was also there. Again, the Stewart-Haas Racing, they really surprised me. But yeah, the Chevrolets, Reddick, Larson, Elliott, Byron, Bowman, like the Hendrick guys, Eric Jones, Stenhouse. And also, there were like Penske. And surprisingly enough, Stewart-Haas Racing. Stewart-Haas Racing surprised me in more ways than one. Harvick, for most of the race, he was the worst car. I know he finished like 7th, I believe, but he was running worse than 25th, like in the first half of the race. He couldn't even crack the top 20, and I was asking to myself, oh my gosh, what's wrong with Harvick? And then, of course, during the late race restarts, he managed to crawl his way back up to the field and finish 7th, just like the closer, just like the closer that he is. I know he's not living up to his nickname as much ever since Martinsville 2020. Harvick hasn't lived up to his closer nickname, of course, but I can still trust him to, even when he struggles, he can still finish in the top 10. Even when he's not winning races and struggling, he can still do it. I mean, he did that in the spring race at Atlanta, where he lost the lap early and was running worse than 20th, and he still managed to wheel that thing to a top 10 last year. So even if he's not winning, I can still trust Harvick to at least bring it home in the top 10. But yeah, his other Stewart-Haas Racing teammates, they were in the top 10 for parts of the race. Chase Briscoe, he led some laps. Cole Custer, after Briscoe dropped down, Custer managed to get to the top 5 and managed to hover on the top 10 for a little while. Aric Almirola, again, after his pit stop, his pit crew put him in position to possibly sneak his way into the top 5. He was running like 6, I believe. On the restart, he just spun out, got loose, spun out, and then he saved it, but he saved it a little too well. He just had to go down. He had to go down pit road and, of course, get some tires while he was at it, because those tires were shot after saving that car. Again, he saved that car a little too well. That dropped him a lap down. But still, that was a great effort for Almirola. and that was not the first time we saw him saving that thing. We saw it during practice, I believe, practice qualifying. I don't know where it was, but he made an amazing save, similar to the one that he had in the race. Personally, I think that the save that he did in the race was so much better because the other save, I think he spun the car. He nearly spun the car twice. But in this one, that was just a straight up save. Again, really great stuff from Almirola. Now the final stretch of the race is where things really got interesting. Tyler Reddick was leading that race, and then he blew a tire. And that really broke my heart because I really wanted Tyler Reddick to win this race. I know I did not pick him. A part of me kind of wanted him to not win this race, so I didn't feel bad because I did not pick him in fantasy. For all the praise that has shown Tyler Reddick so far, I did not pick the guy in fantasy. Like, the guys I pick in my fantasy lineup were Larson, Kyle Busch. I also had Logano, Blaney, Kurt Busch, and then I had Alex Bowman as my sixth pick. I had Alex Bowman over Tyler Reddick. I was considering picking Reddick over Bowman, but I'm gonna give Bowman a chance. I know for a fact I'm gonna be using Reddick more this season. I'm gonna give Bowman a shot. Reddick ended up dominating this race, and then just when I thought, oh well, fine. Even if I didn't pick him from fantasy, I don't want anything bad to happen to him. I just want to see him win this race because first time winners are awesome. And Cindric won last week at Daytona, so why not? He blew a tire while leading. And then coming off of turn 2, Byron just swerved into him because he was trying to, I believe, hold the brake so he could change his lane. No, Byron got loose. The car snapped on him. He hit Reddick, and they both went into the wall. Reddick was able to continue, but Byron hit the wall much harder, and he was out of the race. So just like that, the race opened. It was an arms race to the finish. Eric Jones was there. This opened the race for a lot of guys. Of course, Eric Jones was there. Logano, Blaney, Larson, Chase Elliott had crept up back into the picture at that point, and Austin Dillon and Daniel Suarez. A lot of guys. That opened up the picture for a lot of guys. So the final few laps, cautions, brake cautions, some pit strategy happened, but again, nothing too major. It was just mainly like just one guy staying out. One time it was Blaney, another time it was Briscoe, I believe. But since there was only one guy staying out and nobody else, like on the restart, we all know that guy was gonna get chewed up by the rest of the field. So it didn't really matter. And besides, I believe they had the Cup cars had 12 sets of tires for the entire weekend. So tires weren't really an issue for these Cup cars. So anyways, on the restart, Hendrick was running 1, 2, 3 with Larson, Elliott, and Bowman, the three remaining guys. But then Hendrick just self-imploded. Bowman hit the wall first of all, and then, and this is like the thing that's got a lot of people talking, was what happened at the end of the race, the controversy. Larson, he was fighting Logano for the lead, battling Logano for the lead, and then he sees Chase Elliott. Like trying to take a 3 wide. Larson, of course, thinks that Elliott is coming there to push him, so he goes into Elliott's lane. But Elliott is coming with a big surge of momentum that he doesn't make it there, and he just pinches Elliott into the wall, similar to what Blaney did to what Austin Cindric did to Blaney to win the Daytona 500. Larson did that. Larson just put Elliott in the wall, and then of course Chase Elliott, he eventually has to pit because that contact caused a flat tire, and then he spun out again, and he was pretty much out of the race. My thoughts about this, I don't have many strong thoughts about this one way or another. Or rather, I'm gonna save my thoughts for another video that I'm gonna make like later down this week. I'm gonna make like my honest thoughts on Larson and Elliott, because I feel that this video, this weekend review, is way too long as is, that I just do not want to stretch it out any longer. But anyways, with that set up like the final restart, and this was the moment where everything just came clear to me. Like there was a final pit stop to me. There was a final pit stop, and Daniel Suarez was running 4th at the time, but then like he smacked the wall and fell down to 6th. I thought he was gonna fall out of the top 10, but then when that Elliott caution happened, that the way that Elliott spun out, it looked like he was Chase Elliott was doing a burnout. He felt like no, he didn't do it on purpose. But it was really funny. I even joked about it on Twitter. But after that, pit stops happened. Suarez pit crew gave him a lightning fast pit stop, and because of the composite bodies, you don't have to worry about damage a lot. You can still run. The cars without the fender just cutting into the tire. It's the tires that are the problem, okay? But anyways, Suarez, I think he restarted, like, he came out 2nd behind Larson. It doesn't matter because he restarted on the front row on the inside. It doesn't matter because he restarted on the front row on the inside lane. And oh my gosh, that was such an amazing restart. Suarez had the restart of his life. That was the best restart I had seen from Suarez since Homestead 2016. But of course, well, he was battling Larson for the lead. He got clear Larson for the lead, but then coming off turn 4, or rather entering turn 3, Suarez decides to go inside. Okay, no big deal. Even if Larson is on the outside, like I just had a feeling that Suarez could just clear him. To clear him into turn 1, heading into turn 1. If Larson tried to do the crossover on the front stretch, it didn't matter. Suarez got tight coming off of turn 4. If he got tight coming off turn 4, I thought he was going to hit the wall. He had to let off the gas, and that just allowed Larson to pull off the crossover. And by the time they entered turn 1, that was able to clear Suarez. And Suarez couldn't even get into Larson's draft because him letting off the gas just a little bit caused him to lose all of his momentum. He got passed by Austin Dillon. He got passed by Eric Jones. He eventually finished 4th, which, again, that broke my heart. I mean, it was a great showing by Suarez, but God, he was so close to winning that race. I was pulling so hard for him to win the race. Gosh, that really hurt. So, anyways, Larson ended up winning the race. But it's really gonna be an awkward team meeting at Hendrick Motorsports. And I also expect, if Chase Elliott has some lingering feelings about it, and this is not the first time we have seen Chase Elliott feel some type of way about getting screwed over, because if this is something we have seen out of Chase Elliott, this is becoming a trend right now. Like every time somebody screws Chase Elliott out of a win late in the race, Chase Elliott is gonna race them hard for the rest of the season, basically. Of course, those incidents happen like late in the season, deep in the playoffs. So Elliott just decided he was gonna run them. He was gonna race them hard until they got eliminated. So again, this happened early in the season. Of course, Hendrick Motorsports did some damage control. Larson Spotter took the blame. Also, Larson took the blame. So I don't know, but again, it's gonna be an awkward team meeting. Mr. H is gonna have to do some damage control in order for this attention to not boil over, because it's early in the season. If it was in the playoffs, then maybe it would be like a bit more justified to race the guy harder. But it's early in the season. Like Elliott can still win a race, and then he's gonna have his chance to get at Larson like early in the playoffs if he wants to do that. I don't think he should, because again, they're teammates, and it's not in Hendrick's best interest to do that. But I'm gonna save my thoughts. Again, I don't want to talk too much about that because I'm gonna make a video on that, and I do not want to talk about this a bit too much. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. Overall, this race had a mid-2000s vibe to it. You know, like the greatest era of NASCAR, the one where, not really the greatest era of NASCAR, most people say the 90s, but early to mid 2000s, that was when NASCAR was at its peak in popularity. But yeah, this race had a good old days of NASCAR vibe to it. So overall, to wrap things up, please don't turn Fontana into a short track. Please don't turn this one into a short track. There are so many tracks that you could turn into a short track, and there are so many tracks you could turn into a short track over Auto Club. There's of course the infamous Texas Motor Speedway now. You could just do that. Most notably, if the Atlanta experiment doesn't work, if Atlanta gets repaved, if the Atlanta reconfiguration just ended up ruining the track like it did to Texas, then yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing, at this point then, yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing Atlanta get turned to a short track either. It will hurt me a little bit because, I mean, the history that is there, but if the racing is bad, at Atlanta because of the repave, then sure. At this point, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter that much to me. Matt Kenseth as a guest analyst, again, he was really good, just like Tony Stewart was on the booth last week. And this is a trend that I am really starting to see with former Cup champions like Tony Stewart, Matt Kenseth, Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano during the Xfinity race. He had a lot of his highlights there. The Busch brothers, whether they're together or on their own, they have such amazing chemistry with the other guys on the booth and on their own as well. Also, Mark Martin in the booth, the man, the myth, the legend himself. I know he didn't win a championship, but when he's like the greatest driver to never win a championship, and also, even though he is not a champion, he is treated like one because he just came so close. Like 5 second place finishes is almost as, I don't know if it's almost as good. I don't want to say almost as good as winning a championship, but it's almost as impressive, I'm going to say. Also, one final tidbit I just wanted to mention. This is just a little bit funny. At the end of stage 2, Kenseth interviews Logano, and Logano says, "What's up, friend?" But over the radio, because it's radio chatter, and you can't really hear what the guys are saying. It really seemed like Logano was saying, "What's up, prick?" instead of "What's up, friend?" But either way, whether it was friend or prick, what Logano said to Kenseth, it was both hilarious, and I wouldn't put it above Logano for him to say that. Like, both responses are very realistic coming from Logano, given his past history with Kenseth. Also, a part of me didn't want to revisit this Kenseth-Logano rivalry because ever since Martinsville 2015 happened, I just feel like every time Kenseth and Logano are mentioned in the same sentence, NASCAR is like pushing this rivalry between the two of them and trying to make it as awkward as possible between the two of them. I think that for that interview, Kenseth and Logano, they handled it really well, and it seemed like they had put their old beef behind. It seemed like they had their own like Kobe and Shaq moment, which is funny because we're racing in California, LA. They both played for LA when they had their feud. So, anyways, I had a lot of talk. There was a lot of talk about this Auto Club race. Like when one race creates a lot of mostly positive headlines for NASCAR, that's of course a good thing. Again, mostly positive. NASCAR needs to address this issue with the next gen tires. I cannot stress this enough. But outside of that, if I were to give it a letter grade to this race, to this weekend as a whole, I'm gonna give it a solid B+, just because, again, fix the tires, inner liners. So yeah, that's it. Bye.